Hi, friends, and a very pleasant good day. Welcome to 15241 Today Talk. Our producer and director is Glenn Ward. Our coordinating producer, Linda Dudzinski, and Jim Render and I are pleased to welcome to the program one of my favorite people, Amy Scheuneman. We first met when she was athletic director at Bethel Park and then some time as athletic director of the North Hills. But right now, she is the executive director of the WPIAL, and she's taken over that job at a very challenging time in our Western Pennsylvania and country's history. Amy, thank you very much for joining us. And again, congratulations to you for the job that you've done stepping in, and not ideal at all.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to speak with two fine men like yourselves today.
Yeah, thank you. So what have been the biggest challenges for you stepping in this first year?
I think that would be obvious with the situation that we're in, trying to navigate the best opportunities for our student athletes given the parameters of COVID-19. So the first thing obviously is to learn the job and then try to figure out how to change the job to make it work right now. So it's been a challenge just to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for our students.
How much input do you need to have on a regular basis with the local superintendents to balance what one does as it relates to athletics in concert with what's going on with the teaching?
Well, now more so than ever is the communication, as you said, with the superintendents. Typically, they're not involved with a lot of the decisions or workings of high school athletics. It usually goes through the high school principal and athletic director. Being the situation of schools making decisions on their educational models as well as their athletic models is this year involving the superintendent. So I have been meeting with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit superintendents weekly on their call and just trying to give them information, tell them, explain the reasons why we make certain decisions and why we're doing things the way we've been doing them, getting their feedback and trying to take that into consideration when making decisions. So that communication has been open throughout the fall, and I think that's been a benefit of trying to make things work the best that they could.
How much of an advantage was it for you that you had a period of time there working with Tim O'Malley before taking over the job?
It was greatly beneficial to learn from him and see how he did things, and he walked me through meeting people and just knowing what was expected of the role. So he was a great mentor in that regard and is a great man in general, so it was always a pleasure to work with him.
James?
Does he call in every now and then?
He's enjoying the retired life, as he should. So I haven't spoke to him much other than pleasantries and knowing that we're both doing well.
Tell me something about the job that you didn't anticipate.
COVID.
Yeah. Ace Eberling certainly didn't have to deal with COVID.
No, but it certainly has made us adapt, and so we've done a lot of things now with meetings at the PIA and our committees, through Zoom and different things that I think we will continue in the future to meet more often because it's a lot easier, it's a lot more efficient. So I don't want to look at it all as a negative because we certainly have moved forward in a certain number of areas. We've used the social media aspect of things where that wasn't present before. So we're getting information out in different ways. So I think the pandemic has helped us branch out and reach out and kind of stretch ourselves to be more efficient.
How often do you talk to Bob Lombardi, the PIAA director?
Probably at least once a week now, just as a whether it's questions or meetings or things like that, where there's always something changing these days. So.
Would you say the WPIL and the PIAA has a good working relationship during your tenure?
I believe we do, yes. And that's something that started, back when the pandemic started, as we all had the same focus. And I think that really helped to unite and try to get everybody on the same page and knowing that we're all in this for the kids and refocusing that energy towards what's in the best interest for them. And so now we're all working towards that goal, and just the ideas, sharing of ideas and talking with each other and knowing what the other side of the state is doing and, something we might be doing well that they can implement or changed. And so those discussions have been happening throughout the last 8-9 months, which had never happened before. So just the overall respect across the state, I think, has increased from everybody's regard.
Well, that's good.
That is good. That is good.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but, and I'm not sure I'm proud of it, but I lived in Pennsylvania 30 years, I think, before I realized that the PIAA was not a branch of the State Department of Education, the way it is in Ohio, where I started. And then I found out that the PIAA as well as the WPIL were both independent organizations, not a part of the State Department of Education. And that's an interesting concept. What I'm referring to is when I was coaching, there was a period of time where the WPIL adopted one football and the PIAA adopted another football. And I thought, this is unbelievable that we'd have to use two different footballs as we progressed into the state playoffs. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's why I ask you how the relationship is going.
And I've been a part of those same discussions.
Yeah.
Being an athletic director, for 16 years, a lot has happened in the last, time frame. And part of that were different ball contracts. So our league had one, and the state had one. Which is why there were two different balls for different playoffs.
Are you still operating with two separate contracts?
No, that was changed at the state level of eliminating the option for leagues to create their own contracts. So
Great.
Now we have to abide by theirs.
Yeah. Well,
So.
at least we're back to one ball.
It's true.
I have been somewhat anxious to study how people have been able to deal with the COVID-19 problem. Maybe I'm naive, but I'm of the opinion that people like yourself, educators, public servants, government people, the bottom line is to make sure everybody's as safe as they possibly can be. What are your thoughts about how the public is reacting to the challenges that decision makers face?
It is a fine line because we are trying to provide a safe environment, and at the same time we understand the benefit of playing sports. That's the purpose of our positions. We know that kids need it for the health of themselves, both physically and mentally, the life lessons, all of the things that come into play. So it's a balancing act because anytime you go outside, there is a risk, and we know that. So anytime you step onto a field, there is a risk. You cannot eliminate a risk, but we do feel that the benefits of participation and safely participating far outweigh cancellations. So I think the public has to understand that it is a balance. There are some parameters that need to be followed to make sure that the student athletes are as safe as possible when they're in a gathering, when they're in the group. It's not going to be the way that it used to be. They're not going to be having those team activities, pizza parties, different things, all where they're talking about the largest amount of spread during those times. But they'll be able to play, and they'll be able to compete, and they'll be able to look forward to something and working with their team in that regard. So, to be understanding that the administration is doing the best that they can to make the best decisions for those students while providing a safe environment and the opportunity to participate. So I guess being patient and not being so critical of it's not the way that it used to be. It's not right now anyway.
How did you think that everything worked out in the fall with the fall sports?
I thought that it went as well as it absolutely could have. I feel that all the schools did what they needed to do to protect their student athletes. They were honest. We had teams that shut down for periods of time that came back and sat their quarantine period and were able to, North Allegheny girls soccer, they were out for 2 weeks and they ended up winning the Whitfield Championship. So people followed the protocols. They stayed safe. the schools did a phenomenal job running the tournament on their own and minimizing the amount of exposure with the reduced amount of spectators, but still having spectators, and making sure that everything was in place, whenever people arrived, getting their reports back to us. So it was really a team effort on everybody's part to make the fall season happen. The changes in spectator policies, weekly pretty much changed this fall, and everybody adapted on the fly, and I thought that they did a great job of getting done what we got done.
We are taping this show on December the 14th. Basketball played some schools Friday night of this past weekend, and right now the plan is to go back to playing sports 4th of January. Is that the date? Is that what the plan is?
That would be the earliest. Right now, the state has said that everything can begin again on January 4th, so we are hopeful that it continues to stay that way. And if that's the case, the PIA did pass a practice rule, so everybody would have to practice 4 days before competing again. So the first competition for those who've already completed their preseason would be Friday the 8th.
How do you think you'd be handling this if you were still football coach?
Not well. I mean, I talked about this during the fall. I'd probably would have tried to get the quarterback to move into my house with me. And I'm not sure how Amy would have felt about that, but it would have been it would have been tough, because I'm not the best adjuster there is in the world. I like continuity. Let me ask you this about basketball. We'll use basketball as a reference. Do you have a personal feeling of whether they should play with a mask on or whether they should take it off during competition?
I have a personal opinion. It certainly doesn't have to be the league's position, but
whichever one you want to give.
Yeah, I've participated and run, and I do think it's difficult to get breaths with a mask on. Now, that's not everybody's situation. Some have a little bit harder time, breathing, so that impedes it more than maybe somebody who doesn't. Personally, I would not play with one on, but I certainly have seen people who do compete and compete well with them on. So if they can, I don't see why they couldn't.
As an asthmatic as a youth, I could have never played with a mask on. And that would still hold true today. I tolerate it in the grocery store, and I tolerated it on an airplane one day, which was not easy. Mm-hmm. And then wrestling is kind of a special category because of the closeness of the. Do you think we'll be able to get the wrestling season in?
In regards to masks, or just in general of participation?
In general.
If we get anything and they'll all get in, or none will get in. I think the fact that it's not sports specific right now, it is generally speaking. So if we're allowed to play, I think all of the sports get in. If we're not allowed to play, then none of them get in.
Yeah. Seems to me like wrestling is in a little different category.
It is, but again, you're looking at the time frame spent in that close proximity. You have a basketball game that's quite a lot longer that you're spending that time. In a wrestling match, you have 3 2-minute periods. So
I know, but we're hopefully not hugging one another in a basketball game.
You haven't watched high school basketball lately.
Yeah, it's a non-contact sport, I've been told.
Let me change gears a minute here. You went to Plum High School and then to Robert Morris. At what point in your life did you know you wanted to be an athletic director?
It was something that I was interested in high school. I worked with our athletic director at the time, Harry Orban, who's a great AD and since retired, so wish him well. But in working with him and just seeing the duties that he performed, it interested me. I went to Robert Morris, where they had the sports management program, and did an internship there at a high school at North Hills, actually, and found that I liked that role even more and just pursued that opportunity and thought that would be my long-term goal. I didn't realize I would get into it so soon, so.
But was it more so that you wanted to be an athletic director and coaching wasn't something you thought a lot about?
I did prefer the administrative side. I did coach for a while, but professional coaching or long-term coaching wasn't really in what I was looking for.
You've been at a couple really good school districts, Bethel Park, I know of, and North Hills. Any place else that I'm?
Avonworth.
What are the exciting aspects about being an athletic director?
The best part about being an athletic director is watching the student athletes grow. I mean, you see them in middle school, and then you watch them graduate, and the transition that they make from 7th to 12th grade is just phenomenal. And you know that you've had a part of that in whatever programs you've developed, the coaches that you've hired, the seasons that they've performed in, and just watching them grow and develop has been my favorite part of being an athletic director and working with the coaches in that endeavor. So I've done things, captain's corners and varsity clubs and community initiatives, and watching people just really take leadership roles and develop teams. And I'm sure Coach Render's had those students they're just phenomenal kids that you just look back on and think, wow, they're special. And you know that, and you kind of follow them throughout their time and knowing that you had a part in their development.
Long hours.
Long hours, yes. Long hours.
Challenging to raise a family as an athletic director? Absolutely,
and that's one of the reasons why I looked at other positions such as this. The athletic directors are at the schools normal years, it could be 5-6 nights a week and Saturdays, and it's just the nature of the job, and with no relenting in seasons, because you have 3 that just follow each other. So it is very time consuming and difficult to balance the family work life.
The WPIAL has a tremendous reputation. I've been excited since I left the Pirates to have had the opportunity to announce sports, and I've been extremely pleased to notice how helpful so many people are. People of the WPIAL, athletic directors, coaches. They want their programs promoted, and they're very willing and very, very helpful when it comes from the announcing standpoint. And I assume it's the truth as well with the newspapers.
Great media coverage, great community involvement in everything that the WPIAL does. From a local scheduling, the regular season to the playoffs. I mean, as we had talked about earlier today, just the amount of interest in broadcasts that go on with our events is phenomenal. That means somebody's listening and interested and continuing to, and not just those that have kids on the teams. The overall fan base of the WPIAL is very great, and those who move away continue to follow it.
Was Jack McCurry the coach when you were North Hills?
As an intern, he was. Not when I was there as the AD, no.
Oh, okay. Did you ever have to tell him no?
I did not.
If it's a normal Friday night in the fall, not a WPIAL playoff, do you go to a game on Friday nights?
Well, I did not this year based on the limitations because
Yeah.
of everything that was, very few people in attendance and not even letting outsiders in. So I did not this past fall. Last year I did go to a couple of events in the fall. Not every Friday, but I did go 3 or 4.
And as part of your job, do you have, under normal circumstances, do you think you have to travel to visit schools?
I wouldn't say it's that I have to. I enjoy it. If this is what I'm doing and you want to see the atmosphere, the fruits of your labor, things like that, I think it's an opportunity to step back and look at the situation and what you're a part of. So I look at it as a reward as opposed to a duty, if that makes sense.
How many women in Western Pennsylvania are athletic directors?
I'm not sure the exact number. I think there's probably over a dozen now.
And certainly more and more we're seeing women moving into that position, correct?
It has certainly increased since I began, yes. Yeah.
So when we look ahead now to these winter sports, do you anticipate that there will be capacity limits? I guess that's dictated from the state.
Mm-hmm. Part of the original order back in November, they did decrease the amount allowed at events. So I would assume that would hold true whenever we come back in January. I think it's 10% of indoor maximum capacity. So based on your gym size, you will have a very limited amount of people in your facility.
Well, there's no question that sports does an awful lot for the development of young people.
It does.
Don't you think parents ought to be able to attend every event that their child is involved in?
Certainly would hope that they could. Again, based on some of the capacities, it may only be one parent, not two. There are small gyms out there that may only have 500 capacity, so 10% is 50, and then you have two teams and workers and so forth. So the amount of availability of family would be limited. But I agree with you. I do think that there should be somebody from a household there or able to be there.
I just think our governor was wrong. You take a stadium like Mortarelli or the Wolf Arena, there's plenty of room for parents to be there.
Sure.
And then from a practical experience I had back before cell phones, I had a young man break his back. Not that he didn't eventually walk or whatever, but there was a crack through the spine. And I'm out on the field and I'm waving like this for the parents to come down. And the parents had another birthday obligation and they weren't in the stadium. But I've thought about that a lot this fall. Mm-hmm. And I just think the parents should be there. Especially, these kids, most of them are not 18 years old, so somebody has to make a decision as to what hospital they're going to go to. And that should be, the parents should have access to that stadium, or, especially when the stadiums are big enough.
And that was one of the things we fought for back in August about the arbitrary numbers and how one facility had the same amount as another. You can only have 250 people, whereas certain stadiums could hold way more than 250 people safely. So to move to a percentage-based eventually was very welcomed. And again, we're there now. Unfortunately, that percentage just keeps going down based on the numbers, and they're trying to reduce the amount of people gathering. So I do think the percentage is a better way to go. And hopefully that percentage allows at least a family member there for each student athlete.
Do you have a least favorite chore that you must do as the executive director of the WPIAL?
No, not that I can say now.
Eligibility hearings always go smoothly?
Always. No, we never want to punish a student athlete or hold them out from participation. It's just that is our job, is to enforce the bylaws, and it's not we're not out to get anybody. We're not here to punish, but we do have to uphold the standards, and it's something that is not pleasant to do, but unfortunately we need to do it with a clear conscience, knowing that we're trying to maintain an equal playing field for everybody, and while one may be punished, the rest will be at least on the same level.
Pretty wonderful being a mom, isn't it?
Some days.
Oh, really?
Some days. No, it's good.
What do you do to relax?
I don't know what that is.
Pardon?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, really?
We're always going. No.
I heard you're a pretty good golfer.
I like to golf. That's not relaxing though, because I'm pretty competitive at it. I do like the beach, so I will say that's my relaxing time of going to the beach.
Well, as I said at the outset of the interview, you've done a tremendous job stepping in under very trying circumstances, and no doubt in my mind that the WPIAL made the right choice by selecting Amy Scheuneman to step in and become the new executive director. I congratulate you for that, and Jim and I appreciate you spending time with us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Amy Scheuneman, the executive director of the WPIAL, making the trip into Upper St. Clair to join us for 15241 Today Talk. Thanks very much for joining us.